Episode 75, Overcompensation Much? I'm Mindos, and welcome to my channel. I am a very silly person, as my granddaughters would tell you, and this project is no exception. I'm always finding new files to 3D print. Recently, I've been printing new bits every day. The trick is finding projects for them all. I started with a Hot Wheels Pontiac Firebird, one of my first picks for conversion way back when, but it ended up on the back burner while other projects cut in line. Just before the Shasta Gamer Festival, I decided to finish the project using what I had already printed, just to see what happens. Since this was a classic muscle car, I started with the wheels, and in typical stereotype fashion, I jacked up the rear end. Not wanting to stop with just a bigger tire, I chose a double wide to make a statement. Keeping it 100% real, I'm a Camaro man myself. I have a special place in my heart for the 1977 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am, for obvious reasons, but give me a rally sport any day of the week. Having said that, I have never been a fan of the 90s Camaro. The bubble style they had right before ending the line for the first time. Yeah, they look like SpongeBob SquarePants blew a giant bubble and shaped it into a car. Now, say what you want about Michael Bay, but his revival of the Camaro was most welcome. Despite all the flaws, the Transformer movies can be credited with bringing back the Camaro in classic fashion. When I saw the modern version of Bumblebee, yes, I know he was originally a VW, but come on, Camaro. Well, I instantly fell in love with the retro lines, that throwback styling, and the badass powerhouse under the hood. I made myself a promise that after I made my first million, I was going to buy myself the newest, top-of-the-line model Camaro and live out my midlife in style. Unfortunately, the explosive success of this channel has been very, very slow, and I own a Subaru instead. Not wanting to stop with just the wheels, I picked out an oversized engine from the pile and decided it would look perfect smack dab in the middle of the hood. Since there was already an intake scoop molded into the body, I took a Dremel and scooped out the bottom so it would sit nicely on top without having any giant gaps. When looking for bits for this project, I honestly grabbed whatever looked cool at the time and decided I'll shave off details as the project unfolded. But since this wasn't going to be a traditional model, everything I grabbed, I used. There is one exception to that, the front ram. Instead of an oversized monstrous piece, I used a smaller basic one. This wasn't a conscious choice, as it was the only one that truly fit properly. What you gonna do? Well, I still haven't gotten to own my dream Camaro. I was able to own a brand new Camaro when I was 19. Right out of high school, I entered community college with the aspirations of USC Film School and lunch meetings with Spielberg and Coppola. While I was attending college, I was also working full-time for my parents, who owned a produce distribution company. I had been working for my folks since I was 14, and I was able to finish buying my first car just before my 16th birthday. Once I was driving, I was able to afford gas and cigarettes, which by today's standards makes me sound rich. No, I wasn't rich. Both a pack of Camel Lights and a gallon of gas were both under $2. This was the early days of trickle-down bullshit, and now we're living the end days of those policies. Cheers. My dad was a workaholic, but not for any negative reasons. That was just his work ethic. He worked hard for your family. Period. I always compared him to Boxer from the book Animal Farm, his I must work harder ethic because others depended on him. I was able to see that in myself during my own careers. He is what I call a functioning workaholic. He was still there for me and my family, didn't miss important events, and made sure we had what we needed beyond the basics. He did, however, to fail to detach from work during those times, and behind the quiet reserve, he was stressed the fuck out. I had a unique relationship with my father. I was not the firstborn son, but my mother was his second marriage, so I was a first and middle child. Pops grew up in the 40s and 50s, part of that pre-boomer generation that's not the easiest to pin down. He was raised with a toxic masculinity that's standard for that time, but I saw him more and more able to pick and choose those traits later in his life rather than use them as his default policy. When I was deciding my fall schedule in 1989, Pops had a major heart attack and was inches from death had we not been blocks from the hospital. When I was growing up, Pops seemed like Superman. He did everything and made it look effortless. When I saw him laying there in the ICU bed with wires and tubes sticking out everywhere, it made him look small, and that scared me. In the months that followed, during his recovery, we learned he was an undiagnosed diabetic, and then all the pieces fit into place. His lifestyle, his work habits, his diet choices, all contributing to his vulnerability. With my father out of commission, it was up to the rest of us to keep the family business going, and college was put off for a while. The upside was that I started putting in more hours, which meant more income, and I got a raise, which I think was to make up for the college delay. Not 100% sure, but I'll take it. I was able to start saving up some funds so that when the inevitable happened, I was prepared. I was driving my parents' old 77 Buick LeSabre, a true BFB. Big fucking boat for the uninitiated, and it finally had given up the ghost. Having some money saved up and a solid source of income, I started looking around for something perhaps in the same decade I was in. Once I figured out a budget, Pops and I started looking around for local dealerships. Now, Pops wasn't just a workaholic, he was a respected businessman and earned a local reputation for both his knowledge of the produce business, but also his honesty and his ethic. This helped me immensely as we did not talk to the sales staff. We spoke to the dealership owners. Sizing me up, they knew exactly what vehicle to show me, and I was caught, hook, line, and sinker. She was a beautiful red 1988 Rally Sport Camaro with a 5-speed transmission and a V6 powerhouse. Oh, it was love at first sight. My parents insisted I take a few days to think it over, so I went home empty-handed. But 2 days later, Pops pulled up in front of work with my car. They already knew my decision, and he was there to pick me up so we could go sign the paperwork. First time I got to drive her as my vehicle, I don't remember breathing at all. I got into so much trouble driving her around, but I had a hell of a time doing it. I eventually named her Christine, but that's going to be a story for another time. I rounded out this project with some spiked fenders on the front, giving a little more support to the front ram. With the exaggerated stance from the jack wheels, I wanted a spoiler wing as sort of an optical balance, and I think I nailed it. For weapons, I went with a heavy roof-mounted machine gun, which, mechanics-wise, could have a 360-degree mount. Looking at the jacked ass of the Pontiac, I decided it was time to add a weapon that I have yet to incorporate into any of my models, the RC car bomb. My son had recently inherited all my old RC stuff and has been breathing new life into the 20-year-old equipment. I chose to paint the car bomb similar to the new body he painted for my old truck, so I went with purple and gold. Here we have it, the Overcompensator. If you want to add this to your dream team, you can pick this gem up in my Etsy store. If you're not trying to overcompensate, take a look around at some of the other vehicles on the lot. Since you're dealing with the owner of the dealership, you know you're getting a steal. If you like my video and my historic ramblings, you can hit the like button and feed that algorithm, as well as the subscribe button so you don't miss any of my now weekly episodes. Both are 100% tax-free and free. Look for me at the all-day comics booth during the Forest Moon Festival. We'll be at the Friday Night Market on May 29th and Sequoia Park on May 30th here in Eureka, California. You can see more behind-the-scenes content on my social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon, as well as updates on con events. And while you're trying to figure out if you love or hate the Overcompensator, don't forget, they ain't gonna paint themselves. All right, here we go. This is the NPR voice. Let's try this. 3, 2, 1. Episode 75. Overcompensation much. Yeah, no, okay.